I'd love to hear a little bit from each of you on your role in your company, and then we'll get into the meat of the questions. So Kim, do you want to start off?
Absolutely, and thanks for the invitation. It's awesome to see the year kickstarting with a lot of momentum and a lot of excited people. So yeah, very excited to be here. Thank you so much. I guess from my perspective, I wake up every single day with the dream of helping as many entrepreneurs and founders and startup teams as I possibly can. Gives me a lot of meaning. At my current role, I'm extremely fortunate to work with thousands of startups, helping them with their equity, which is hard and confusing. Basically, so they can focus on going and building a better world for all of us. That's super exciting, and we can leverage equity really well for that. On my, I guess, day to day, it's really, you know, as a founder and CEO is my current role. So it's really about driving the vision forward for the company, making sure everybody, especially the leadership team, is fully empowered, and talking a lot with customers to make sure we're really connected into solving the biggest problems that they have. And then, of course, as the underlying kind of oil to make the machinery really work, the culture is such an interesting and important subject that I think a lot about.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie. I head up corporate development, ops and strategy at CultureAmp. So CultureAmp is an employee experience platform, and we help our over 6,000 customers globally with their employee engagement, as well as performance and employee development. So we have offices all around the world. And my day-to-day, I also wanted to note that I realized everyone on this panel has a really cool name to their startup, with cake and who gives a crap. CultureAmp is very cool too, though, obviously. So my day-to-day is really about focusing on M&A, as well as fundraising, but also the strategy of the company and the corporate planning around the strategy.
Cool. And I'm Ali, and I work for a profit-for-purpose business called Who Gives a Crap. We are a brand focused on bringing toilets to everybody in the world, which is pretty fun and cool to drive us every single day when we turn up. My role at Who Gives a Crap has evolved quite a bit. I've been there for 5 years, and I look after our people and culture teams, our internal operations teams, our customer, and our insights teams. So it's pretty broad and diverse, but really fun because we get to tackle not only making sure essential operations and how the business operates are evolving and keeping up with the pace of change, but also looking for those really fun ideas, innovations, and ways that we can dramatically increase our impact for the world, and get closer to our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal. So yeah, that's me.
Great. So we might stay with you, Ellie, and you can kick us off with a question, and I'd love to hear from the rest of you as well in response to this one. What are the current challenges of building, maintaining, and scaling culture given the current economic climate?
Yeah, that's a fun one to start with, and hopefully I'll try to keep it lean and we can just build off it, because the short answer is there are many, and they are relentless in how fast and furious they fly at you. So there is pretty much nothing happening in the world at the moment that you're protected from in your business. And so we find that we've got a constant requirement to stay on top of what is going on and thinking about those risks and opportunity assessments and evaluations on our current business strategy, where we're going, our plans, and how they might change with a macro view, to try and stay away from, you know, that swirl and the reactive state of responding to problems, and really kind of keeping our eye on the core of how things are changing. And then when we think about our team and how we're going to do that, there's also a ruthless commitment to listening, understanding, and trying to figure out how you can make and how we can make our environment the best environment to support our team to overcome those challenges. And there are very few silver bullets or one-size-fits-all ideas when it comes to that work. So it's an ongoing commitment to make sure that staying close to your team, understanding your team, and understanding, what is impacting them and their lives and how that's impacting the way that they show up for work, need to factor into how you think about the processes, your policies, and how you're showing up and creating an environment that's proactive and positive for them as well.
So just to build on something Ellie said, I think, the environment that we are in today is one of obviously constant upheaval, but we've been living through this for the last several years, and I think it's kind of a constant now. I think what it provides, despite the uncertainty, is a real forcing function to focus on what's important. And a part of that is, I think, actually a gift. So in times where, for example, the cost of capital is more expensive, it does require you to be really clearly focused on, what for startups, like getting obviously product market fit, gaining that traction, and then also with how you deploy your resources, like who are the people that you need and the culture that you need to build to be really deliberate about those choices that you make. Because I think in times like this, like when the going gets tough, it's when the cream really rises to the top and you start to see some of the, I think, startups and obviously companies at the size of CultureAmp and upwards, you see people being able to get ahead because they can consolidate the work that they've done around their people and their culture in these turbulent times.
Yeah, I guess just building on that, I just want to take a step back and say, the founder journey is super, super hard. And part of that is when we're seeing all the news and there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and we need to operate well on that. And from, I guess, more a founder perspective and the leaders of the company, how do they manage to, at one stage, at one point, being kind of paranoid, realistic about what's going on and how are the competitors and all of that, and at the same time being extremely optimistic to the extent delusional level sometimes. And so how they communicate that to the team, which can't sit and read all the news all the time, or maybe do, but we have to make sure they always have the confidence and the belief, not only the internal team, but that we can overcome the challenges. So that communication, how we deal with that, is and it comes back to being obsessed about the customer and the problem and making sure that's the focus always, no matter what is happening outside.
Great. Kim, I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. How do startups define and cultivate their unique culture and values? And how do these elements contribute to their success?
Yeah, thanks for that answer or question. I don't have, of course, the final answer to that, but I just want to highlight kind of how I see culture fits into the overall picture for a startup. So we believe strongly that the success of a startup is three things. It's to realize the big mission and vision, which is ultimately about getting as many customers as possible and giving them the maximum value that you possibly can. And there's a big meaning in creating a positive impact on that. But the secondly, of course, with raising money and making sure everybody has a financial reward, you need to grow the value of your company, which obviously Cake tries to help as much as we can with the equity part that ties into the culture as well. And thirdly, and extremely important, especially as there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, we have to have a great journey together as a team. So it's not worth achieving those things if people are burning out or they're hurting their relationships and all of that. So I guess at Cake we call our company culture creative healthy lifestyle, and that's really providing a framework for everyone on their own journey to live the values. And the core values we have is around the individual's health, his close family and friends relationships, and being active in nature. And those are really like the foundation to show up healthy every day, to be very present in the moment, and to make sure that the journey, which it's a long journey, the startup journey, and it's not just the founders, it's the whole team, is something that is a good chapter in your life, whether it's a short or long period. So we do a lot of kind of direct things where we try and make it more authentic as well. So like leveraging the tool of culture more than it's something that is written on the wall. You kind of live it every single day. And some of the initiatives we do like that is celebrate. We have a monthly all hands where we celebrate the ones that are the best at supporting other people on the journey. We have quarterly OKRs, and we have 3 top goals in those OKRs. And one of those goals is really around the culture and that we're having an awesome journey together. That basically means that every employee is sitting every day and looking at those goals and trying to make us achieve them. And it also means at the end of the quarter, we're not succeeding as a company, even if we have a lot of growth, if we are burning people out. So we take it very, very serious in the company.
I'd love to build on that a little bit because I do have a lot of empathy for everybody in this room as founders and leaders as well. It's a tough thing to keep front of mind for you to think about your culture and the environment that you're creating. But a really easy funnel, which I often bring people back to and just kind of makes sense for me, is when you're writing your business plans and you're thinking about the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, the goals that you're trying to achieve. If we go back to the beginning and we look at what feeds into that, the culture and the environment that you create is what will inspire and drive the engagement of your team. The engagement of your team is what will impact the performance of what they're able to achieve. And it's through that performance that you get your outcome or your output. So whenever you feel like it's a distraction or something's taking time, bring yourself kind of back to that and don't exclude yourself from that equation. So you are one of the people that needs to benefit from that environment and that culture that you're creating as well. If you are miserable and you are hating it, you're probably not going to get your best work done either. So don't take yourself out of the equation when you're trying to figure out how to create that best environment and that best culture, which is ultimately going to drive the outcomes at the end of it.
Great. I think there's some really sage wisdom there. Jackie and Ellie, I'd love to hear from you. There are obviously a lot of startups in the room here today. And one of the things top of mind, and it was, the focus of a whole session before as well, is thinking about prioritizing retention or hiring. What are your thoughts on how startups should prioritize now? And I guess, what are you seeing in your respective organizations?
So I immediately think of something that I call the talent flywheel. And that's just the concept that when you have great people, there are positive compounding impacts to having great people. So if you think about, when you're working in a team where there are already great people, you love working there, you do better work, it up levels the standard, and then it creates its own kind of its own flywheel, but also a great and unique culture. And that then becomes like a cornerstone for building out the team, because you then attract better great people, because great people want to work with other great people. And so I think in this, to respond to this question, to me, it's less about the trade-off between retention and attracting talent, but rather focusing on and being really deliberate about who you're bringing in and how you're developing and retaining the people that you have. Because as well, obviously, just like your go-to-market motion, having a leaky funnel is not a winning strategy. So you've got to also look after the people that you have. And then there are the other macro factors around the skill shortage that we all hear about. And I think, certainly in my role, it's something that I'm thinking about a lot. And that is only going to be filled through developing your own talent. So identifying where your gaps are, but also making sure that the people you have are really being well looked after and being given opportunities, even though that can feel really slow and painful at times, I think is something that, again, has a positive compounding impact.
Yeah, totally. It's not one of those things that you can weigh up as a this or that equation. You truly do have to look at it holistically and think about your existing team members and where you need to bring in external help as well. Another thing to kind of bear in mind on the startup journey is that your needs and what is going to drive your people and the skills that you need in your company, they are going to change year on year, sometimes half year on half year. And so, again, not looking at potentially saying goodbye to some people as a failure, because sometimes people need to go and find the next thing that kind of fulfills them, and it might not be what you have to offer. Maybe they only want to work in companies that have 10 people where they're doing everything, and they don't want to work in the company that is 200 people or 1,000 people. And so celebrating that and kind of really looking at the insights that you're getting from both your existing team members, those who are leaving and who is coming in, not just the case by case, each role. Really thinking about how the makeup of your whole team is shifting in line with where the business is going and what you're trying to achieve. So you are really trying to weigh up two of them. I've heard a lot of people who are putting hiring freezes on at the moment, who are pulling back from adding any additional resource into their companies because they feel like it's the thing that they have to do. I do think that's a mistake. If you take a step back and you look at what your current team actually need, if they are drowning under capacity and you truly need to bring talent into your business, then you want to look at how you can cover those costs rather than just trying to look at it as a quick way to cut costs from the beginning, because it will probably end up hurting you in the long run. So anyone talking to investors, talking about bringing money on, don't take headcount and hiring off your agenda at the very beginning of that conversation. Talk about what you can achieve if you are able to continue to hire and to continue to bring people in, because it will probably help you retain your best performers to ensure that they don't go underwater.
Great. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're all thinking around this question of how do startups maintain integrity and authenticity of their culture and values in the face of external pressures or macroeconomic changes?
I guess I'll just jump into, I think the most impactful thing is to share maybe our war stories. We have a lot of them. So in the beginning of last year, Cake didn't achieve the investment that we expected. So we had to kind of cut costs, and that included some people and focus harder, and also cut costs internally with the tools we're using and all of that, which how you manage that is so important. So, if you're letting people go, how do you do that in the most respectful manner? And, you can give a lot of support in making sure they have a path forward and getting recommendations or finding jobs for them. And, after there's lots of learnings in that, both, seeing that the people that left us at the time, they're still really good friends. And I think that helps us just as a company and as a brand and being authentic. So I think that how you treat people is extremely important. And, we also learned that, reducing the team and thinking a little bit differently with different markets, we've actually grown more than we've ever had with less people. So, how do you constantly build that world-class team where, it's very important that people that have ambitions also can see that they have a big impact. So how much can you use technology and all of those things to scale that? I think also just in regards to living your values authentically, it comes a bit down to, what you think, what you say, and what you do is pretty much in alignment. So some of the initiatives we do is run events, surf and yoga and all of that. So, the active in nature is something we do with the community outside Cake, not just inside the company. So I think you just function a lot better as a person when, what you do and what you say is fully aligned. So yeah, I think it's through the tough times that you see how well you can do with keeping the integrity of the company.
I think one thing that Culture Amp did really well through the pandemic was in how intentional we were about communication. I think that's incumbent upon any leader to be really thoughtful about what you're communicating and how you're doing it and when. So what is it that you want to be open and transparent about? Because I think a lot of the time transparency pays dividends, but also what do you need to be really mindful of to create what I call quiet for my own team so that they can focus on the work that needs to be delivered and is not a distraction when everything around us is really noisy. So one of the things that we implemented, and so just for context, Culture Amp is much bigger scale, 1,000+ employees. But through the pandemic and having to go everything obviously going remote, we instituted something called the Daily Situation Room, which is something that takes inspiration from the US military. But the way that we implemented that was to keep people really updated on what was happening day to day. So this is at the very beginning of COVID-19, obviously, where there was so much uncertainty. And Didier, our CEO, was really open and about the uncertainty, but also trying to share as much relevant information with the global team as possible. But also that was a way to get people to focus again on what they could control, and the confidence that as a leader, you're going to take the measures that are needed to make sure that you're, to continue the military analogy, like steering the ship in the right direction. So I think communication and using that really thoughtfully as a tool is very important, and one that you can start as a founder now.
Yeah, we're big over communicators at Who Gives a Crap, which is a little bit helped out by the fact that we also communicate in emojis and lots of puns. So it is pretty easy. But yeah, I think similarly going through the beginning of COVID-19, we found ourselves communicating a lot of information very frequently, to the point where it was overwhelming and it was becoming less helpful. So something that was really helpful for us in that moment, and we continue to do, is really step back and make sure that we were clear what we needed to be communicating out to the business, and what our guiding philosophy or frameworks were to help us make decisions in the moment, and how we could share that with the business as well, so that they could in some way feel like they had a little bit of an idea of how some of the decisions that might need to be made really quickly were going to be made. So they understood the why and the drivers behind it, which was really helpful for us. We did a similar approach. We actually took it from Amazon, actually, not from the military. So it's probably an evolution from the military. But we had a group that would come together and talk about the things that we had agreed were important for us to talk about, and made sure that we had really quick lines out to the rest of the business to let them know what was going on as well. So yeah, comms is key, and really staying true to your why and your purpose and what's important, and not getting distracted by all the stuff that's going on around that.
Yeah, I'd love to sort of go a bit deeper on that. I'm keen to hear from your perspective, like what sort of advice, I guess, do you have for startups on like retention or motivation strategies, particularly in times of uncertainty? I know you've talked a little bit about some there, but would love to go a little deeper on that.
Yeah, I think when you start to pull together your retention or your engagement strategies, it's quite easy to jump into the what, come up with a bunch of ideas, feel like they're all really great, and kind of jump into launch mode. But we really encourage ourselves and each other to think as much about the what as we do the why, and also the how as well, because some ideas might feel like they are going to be really great and really fun, and then you go into execute and it's just a whole lot of wasted time and energy. So that's not to say that you can't do anything quickly. I'm saying the ideas that come to you in 2 minutes, when you think about the what, spend 2 minutes on the how, spend 2 minutes on the why, and you should come out with something which is a little bit clearer. The other thing is, don't design for design's sake. Keep yourself core to why you're doing it. That should be hopefully inspired and driven by insights, feedback, information that you've had from your team. It should also be guided by the values, the things that are important to you, the goals that you've set out, and what you're trying to achieve as well. And the kind of coming together of those two things should really help you. And then lastly, really making sure that you are getting out of your bubble. It is very easy to stay in the comfort of your company and of the people that you already know and the ideas that you're already accustomed to. But making time and creating space to get out there and find out what else is happening in the world, getting inspiration from things that are going well in other businesses as well as things that aren't, and bringing that back into the fold as well, helps you stay a little bit ahead of where you're trying to go, rather than just constantly trying to fix or solve for the space that you find yourself in today.
Great. And Jackie, I think curious if there's sort of any themes that you're seeing from your customers, and how do you advise customers during sort of periods of uncertainty, whether that's sort of the current climate or perhaps during COVID?
Ellie mentioned hearing a lot of people talking about hiring freezes. That's obviously in mainstream media, and it's something that our customers and the global market more broadly, I think, is feeling. Culture Amp is, I didn't mention this earlier when you asked about what we're doing. So Culture Amp is still hiring and growing, but some of our customers are certainly feeling some of the pain. But one of the interesting pieces of research that we've been looking at recently is the impact of layoffs. So kind of unsurprisingly, the engagement level of employees after you make layoffs falls quite dramatically. But one thing we've found, so looking more broadly at a data set of hundreds of companies, so outside our customer base as well, is that engagement level can come back around 12 to 18 months after the layoffs have been made, but only if you've also started hiring again shortly after the layoffs are made. So to me, this is just an interesting data point to understand that, you know, the uptick that can come still from after having deep cuts, that you can still preserve that engagement score from your employee base. Again, though, one of the things that we've been clear about is, you know, be really intentional. If you're going to be making layoffs, be keeping that information in the back of your mind, but also that communication, that transparency, we know pays dividends. And then something we also know through our data set and our research is that development is the #1 reason people join a company across our data, but it's also the #1 reason people leave. So again, that focus on making sure that you're spending the resources that you have to develop the people who, you know, they might not look perfect for a role today, but you can actually see that they have, you know, what I see as core, which is conscientiousness, to then deploy them to a future role, but you're going to have to invest in them to get there. I think that's something that we're still at record lows of unemployment. So the fight for talent is still going to be felt by all of us in this room. So that development factor to me is another key focus.
Awesome. So we're going to move to audience questions, and there's a bunch coming in. But before we do that, I just want to sort of end on a positive question for you all, and then we'll jump into some of the audience questions. So we've talked a lot about sort of, you know, being resilient and sort of managing challenges and so on, but I'd love to hear how startups can leverage their culture and values to drive innovation and differentiation in the market.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that, because I'm a big believer in diversity, and I think creative ideas comes from a big mix of diverse people, and not just gender, but different age groups and definitely different backgrounds and cultures. So like at Cake, for example, we have a big engineering team in Portugal. They're somewhat dog lovers to the extreme degree that they have a dog shrine in the office, and you know that seems quite quirky to the Australian team, but at the same time they make a lot of fun of all the sharks and dangerous animals here and spiders and all of that. So it really creates that bond that you need to work across borders and in different time zones. And I'm completely convinced that every future startup that can leverage working across different time zones and borders will be absolutely unstoppable, especially against competitors. You unlock all the creative ideas around the world together with your team. So it's much more effective, the positive impact you can have with that.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on Kim's point. I think, there's a real value early stage when you have that small group of people with which you have shorthand. So you've almost got all of this tacit knowledge, and there's like an in-group vibe to it. But I think as you get bigger, as you start to gain traction, and certainly as you start to scale into becoming a bigger organization, that kind of shorthand stops paying off. Like you can't actually communicate a shorthand with a medium-sized group of people. And that's when I think you notice that not having a diverse group of people in the room, and again, it can be diversity by appearance, but basically people who are not like you, you'll start to miss out on being challenged on, the ideas and the convictions that you might have. But because you've all got this language amongst yourselves, you might not actually see the blind spots and the opportunities. And I think that's where, again, using compounding, if you've got a group of 5 or 10 people and you're all pretty similar, it becomes much harder to then attract people who are not like you, because you've already got kind of a bubble effect that looks more I think, potentially intimidating for people who are different. And so investing early and being mindful of that really early stage, like again, using math like compounding, you'll get to see it will be much easier to grow in a diverse way if you are focused on that much earlier.
Yeah, I'm like plus one. And then I think the kind of core drivers, what gets you out of bed every day, what keeps you focused, what keeps you motivated, keep that really close and talk about it a lot. Be willing to pressure test it, be willing to pull it apart, but also use it as your vehicle for celebration as well. So I think it's really easy to kind of think about the things that you want to have in your back pocket when things aren't going very well. Think about the things that you want to be able to pull out when things are going really well as well. So for us, we do have, we find it a little bit of a benefit in that our purpose and our values that we talk about to our customers are the same as what we're talking about internally in our business as well. If you can get that early, please grab it, hold on to it, because it will just save you so much time and effort in the long run. And it will make you feel more comfortable, more confident, and more excited to celebrate when things are going well, both with your customers and also with your team, and therefore with your community. And hopefully you've built a really diverse community around you as well. So yeah, just really kind of holding on to that purpose, celebrating it, and using it as much as you can.
Awesome. So I think you're the perfect group of people to be answering this question, because you all work for organizations that are quite different sizes. So keen to hear, do you have any advice on navigating the cultural shifts that accompany moving from a small to medium to large organization?
Well, from my perspective, I think this is a really important point, of course, with startups that change so much, and it's understanding, as we talked about, who's capable of adjusting to those changes. You have to change as a person, and not everyone is comfortable with that. So for the next stage, and sometimes it's better to bring in someone that actually has experience with that next phase you're doing, rather than someone that wants to be upskilled in that. So that's a really, really important way to understand that. I think overall, it's about clarity, being better and better at defining this. This is the area you need to focus on. And I'm saying that because in the beginning of an early startup, everybody's doing everything, especially founders. And certainly, they have to start letting go of this and this and this. And that's quite comfortable, and don't know if that's the right thing to do when you're used to just attacking anything, and you have to start trusting. So this changes really rapidly in a growth startup. So you need to, I guess, frequently from time to time, just reinforce, bring more clarity. Well, this is actually your responsibility area and the role you're playing now, even if before you did all of that, or you are a founder. So it's a matter of clarity. I think that can empower because we need to have friction there, but it's constructive friction, so we can focus on the big problem, the big mission, solving that problem.
Yeah, I'm gonna say share it as well. So it is really hard to let go, but it is so great when you do let go. So try to find those ways where you can early on. I can only really speak from Who Gives a Crap perspective, from going from a small business to a medium business. We 5 years ago when I joined, we were a team of 23. We're now a team of 224, I think, yesterday. But we're global. We're all around the world, and that's a 5-year period that growth has happened. There's zero chance we would have been able to build the culture and the environment that we have if a few of us tried to hold on to that. Nor would we have got the results if we only let the ideas come from a small group of people as well. So investing early and trying to find those collaboration mechanisms, those ways to get input and also feedback and share out information across your business and across your team, shares the load. It helps more people take on more responsibility faster, sharing out accountability, getting more explicit with who owns what and why, and how that's changing through your business becomes an easier conversation to have in the moment, rather than having to create really challenging stop and step change moments through change management, which always consume a lot of time and energy and costs as well. So the sooner you can share the load, you can bring more people on the journey, and you can share out the responsibility, the better, and more of an organic process that you'll go through from small to medium.
So I'll take the medium to large transition. So when I joined Culture Amp a couple of years ago, we were 400 odd people, and now we're over 1,000. So that's really rapid growth, where you don't have a chance of knowing the people's names around you with whom you might be working day to day. One thing I think, well, there are a couple of things that immediately come to mind. I think, both of the things that Kim and Ellie touched on, in being really ruthless about what is important at this point in time. So I think it's dangerous to get too attached to certain things. And so being able to look without ego at what you're focusing on and whether you or the people who you have around you are the right people to be doing those things, I think is really healthy. In my role, running the kind of strategy infrastructure for the company, I find that every 6 months I have to reiterate and potentially come up with something completely new because the thing that I built before is no longer fit for purpose. And so having that, I think, lack of attachment is really healthy in the long term. And the second bit is therefore having people around you who will keep you honest and hold a mirror up to you and not just, kind of go with the flow or appease you. I think that's really important too.
So we talked a little bit about diversity earlier, and there's another question from the audience around how much does inclusion and accessibility factor in when thinking about culture and people within a team? And do you feel startups should be doing more of this?
Okay, I'm definitely going to say yes. I was a founder once. That was about 7 years ago, and the room looked somewhat different to how it looks today, but it was really, really challenging being one of the only female founders working in fintech. It was not a welcoming environment. And so the point that I made earlier about as you grow your team and the more it looks like just you, the less it's going to invite people who have different ideas and possibly really good ideas to come and join you. So I think investing in that and seeding that really early is important. And as we all mentioned, I think it's diversity and inclusion, not just on gender or race. It's on all sorts of vectors, which might not be obvious as well. And it's something that I think is really, really easy to deprioritize because you've got a million other things on your plate. And the thing that you're obviously looking for is traction. But without this, like, you're actually missing a big piece. And it sounds cliche, and I recognize that people talk about it a lot, but I think it's genuinely a missed opportunity if you're not doing it from today or before today.
I agree with all of that. And I guess just one exercise that I think, or a way to frame it, is like each person has kind of like an ikigai, what they like to do, what they're good at, and what the company and what the world needs. And then the company has some sort of an ikigai, which is a collection of that. And how do you balance both paths there to really empower and not say, for example, health, if that's a value, it looks like this. No, each person has their own path. And you can have times where someone is more skilled, but that's not necessarily, there's someone who's burning for learning and has all that energy flowing in that direction, that can actually be a better choice. So it's really trying to make that math, but empathetic understanding of what's the ideal team for this challenge we have in our hands currently.
Yeah, I think at early stage, you've got a bunch of opportunities to take shortcuts. You've got a bunch of ways that you feel like you can get from A to F and skip all of the letters in between. This is one of those ones that you should really resist the temptation to take a shortcut because it will hit you hard when you get further down the track. It's really easy to think I'm just going to hire those 3 people that I already know before, and I'm not even going to really bother talking about what kind of work they're going to do or focus on the skills that are required. I'm just going to get them because I know them. And then all of a sudden you have got a room of 100 people that look, sound, feel, think the exact same way as you. And highly likely you're going to miss a massive cohort of customers who will never relate to what solutions you're coming up with as well, let alone bringing people in-house. So those kind of shortcuts that you can take at the beginning when it comes to building a diverse team, avoid them because they will hit you. Think about how you can create equitable, bias-free influence recognizing processes in your hiring. Think about how you can center yourselves in the skills that you need, not maybe the vibe that you get from a person, and do that work early. It will become second nature. You won't even think about it by the time you hire your 20th or your 30th person. It'll be really natural, and really just kind of invest in those skills that you can ensure that you're building a diverse, equitable, and inclusive team.
I just want to add to that. So I think, it's really important that we bring in the diverse team and collaborate, but how do we kind of know that the culture is working? I guess the way we see that is, the culture really helps create the aura or the trust among people, so that feedback is happening, especially when you are very different types of people, right? So if people trust each other enough to give feedback, it means that we as leaders or whatever can know what's actually going on. So it's not always the most important that, I'm good at that and I'm bad at that. It's, well, is that in alignment with what the team is thinking? Because else we can't really manage expectations, and we tend to burn people. So it's really important to just take a step back and look at, well, I have a beautiful culture and people say that's a good culture, but how's the communication flowing by itself, so that problems are resolved? That's kind of like the oil machine doesn't get stuck. It's kind of flowing and overcoming the friction. It becomes a constructive friction because you need feedback to happen, to improve yourself, and you need people that are can keep you accountable. You can't figure out the world inside your own head. So it's good to test, is feedback flowing as it should in the company, and then you're doing something right with the culture.
Yeah, I love that, Kim. And if there is one shortcut you can take with that, it's go out and find out who all the other great businesses are and where all the other great cultures exist. And think about those as your inspiration points, and potentially even the playgrounds that you try to lure talent in from, because you're gonna be able to bring that knowledge into your business faster than trying to teach it and trying to train it in-house. So a shortcut that you can take is be inspired by the right businesses, and try and build those relationships that are going to help you get to where you're trying to go faster.
I could talk about culture all day. So but just I think, also, like, obviously, leaders have a huge responsibility in like, if we're getting more practical, in both one, really showing how you behave with the values that we have. So what does it look like? You can only write so much about this value looks like that. You have to show it, so people can get inspired from it. But you also have to show what's not tolerated as that falls outside the behavior. So, and secondly, also, this is from long-term experience in other companies trying to say, to force the idealistic culture. It doesn't exist, right? It's often comes out a lot from the people and sometimes the loud people in the room, and the collection of that creates a culture. And then the leaders can kind of tap a little bit here and make sure they don't tolerate the wrong things. But it comes out, especially from the leaders. So they have a huge responsibility in driving that. And it becomes a collective, beautiful thing if it works well and the feedback flows.
That's about all we have time for. It's been great hearing your insights. So thank you so much, Ellie, Kim, and Jackie. I'm sure there was a lot of great takeaways amongst the audience today. I know there's more questions that people had, so feel free to go and find these three if you really want to ask your question in person. And thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you.